All right, let's talk a little BMF. So I'm bringing you days old news here, but it is very relevant. Dana goes on the Pat McAfee show, and they just have a conversation. Very entertaining. But one of the things that came up is Pat McAfee said to Dana, "Why are you not putting up the BMF belt?" Now, that's like the first guy to ever ask Dana about the BMF belt. And I was so happy that somebody did, because I feel like I'm by myself over here yelling from the rooftops and nobody can hear me down below. Like, you guys haven't really backed me up on this either. But I know you liked the BMF belt. I was there the night that it happened. It was this massive attraction and event. Dana responded and said, I probably should have, particularly since George Masvidal has it. Maybe moving forward on pay-per-views that don't have a title fight, we should bring it back. Now, that was about as light as you could answer a question. We got absolutely no commitment there, but we at least have somebody bringing up the topic, and we don't have the president saying what he said last time, which was, this is a one-off. That's where we left off on this, guys. I mean, when I tell you that the media stepped aside and nobody is putting Colby Covington, nobody, Kamaru Usman, nobody has insisted that belt be put up. And we left off with Dana saying, hey, it's fun. Everybody loved it. Great attraction. One night only. Okay, well, now we're all of a sudden it turns into, I probably should have put it up. What would that look like? Just for fun, what would that look like? The rule is it has to be stated ahead of time. That's just the rule. You may like that or you may not like that. I've seen people come out and do a proper lineage to a title. That's a fun conversation, but it goes into the same bucket of the greatest of all time. It is just a conversation. You can't prove the lineage. The belt must be put up. And this comes back from our brethren in the professional wrestling days. Ric Flair was the NWA champion, and he would get pinned 1, 2, 3 on television in front of the world. But he'd still be the champion because it was a non-title match. So you may like it or you may not like it, but I have heard some of you say that Masvidal is not the BMF champion, that because he lost to Usman, Usman is the BMF champion. And I got to stop you and go, wait a minute, technicality for sure. But an extremely relevant technicality, the belt was either up or it wasn't. And it wasn't. Now, why do I go into that? For this very reason. There's only 2 ways you can do a belt that we've ever seen in combat. Now, we all agree in combat we're going to fiercely adhere to the rules that we make up on the spot. But if history does mean something, we got 2 ways to do this. The belt that I've always liked the most prior to the BMF, I like that. That just caught on, that just worked. Not to mention they found the 2 BMFs. It just, everything came together. The belt that I liked the most was the super fight. And a couple of people from the super fight era have attempted to claim that they are a super fight champion. They're wrong. There is no lineage with the super fight belt. It was a one-night only super fight. Whoever won left with the belt and was the super fight champion of that night. The second the sun goes down and comes back up, it's over. Very relevant that you understand this. Because Dana said George has the belt. Now, if we're going to hold Dana absolutely literal to the words that he said, and in this form, we are. That means that George did not lose it to Masvidal because it was not up for grabs. That means George cannot lose it to Colby because it is up for grabs. And if that belt is to be contested in the format of a lineage, 1/2 of the next BMF championship has to be George. That's not what the history of belt says. Because you can also defer back to the super fight belt, which is the one that I loved. It's a super fight. We all knew what that meant. And they never screwed us once. They never just brought 2 guys in and go, this is the super fight. No, it was a super fight. It was a mega fight. It was a top contenders. It was 2 former champions. It was 2 huge stars. Whatever it was a super fight. We all understood it. But if we're going to go in that vein, that means Masvidal does not have to be present. That means you could bring in Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier. That could be a super fight. Which means you could bring in 2 brand new principles, and that could be for the BMF belt. And the BMF that George won was a one night only, which would explain to the viewing audience why there was not a lineage and why it did not go on the line. Those are your only 2 options, unless we go and create a third one. I'm talking about historically speaking, those are your only 2 options. Dana somewhat did clear that up by stating that George Masvidal has the belt, which would lead you to believe if he does resurrect the championship to continue on in some form of a lineage that George would be half of it. I'm just submitting for you. He doesn't have to be. There is another way. But I do think that's super fun. I think this would be a great case in point. I think Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier, they fought not only once but twice in pay-per-views, and they were the mega pay-per-views of the year, would have qualified for a super fight. If we're going to replace the super fight with BMF or whatever verbiage we want to use, we're still talking about the same thing. We're talking about something very special and very significant that does not represent the undisputed or the interim champion, but it deserves to be crowned off in an evening with an award that is recognizable by the community, which is us. So I don't know how far we've got down the road. I really do. Sometimes I feel like you guys leave me hanging. I keep bringing up the BMF. I want the BMF belt put up. You guys loved it. We all loved it. I'm demanding that it does be resurrected. Nobody is co-signing that statement. I want you to. But Pat McAfee asked a question of the decision maker who said, yeah, I probably should have done that, considering Masvidal has it. If that's the case, that doesn't mean on Saturday this thing goes up for grabs unless there's an official announcement and an amendment to the agreements. But aside from that, it looks like we might get the BMF belt back. Then we will have to figure out, is that going to be a lineage? Are we going to see what we've already seen, which is it has to be announced, or therefore it's not a title match? Or is it just going to be the way to cap off an evening where a guy who is the BMF champion may not be involved, may not even be a participant involved in the next BMF match, which in fairness would be a really good way to do it. It would, because don't forget about the weight categories. Before you think that's wrong, to have a BMF title and not allow Masvidal to be involved, Stipe doesn't even have a chance to win the damn thing. See the problem? 45-pounders, Volkanovski doesn't even have a chance to win the one thing. So now you have a division, in this case being 170, which was very arbitrary to the thought process, that happens to have another crowning moment that no other division has. So you see where it would solve a problem if we did make it a one night only. Here you go. Here's how we're crowning the evening. But then we go to a different division. The more opportunity, the more better, guys. And there's only a few things that we understand about this sport. We know what a punch is. We know what a kick is. We understand what a goddamn belt means to a combat athlete. Quit leaving me on this one. Back me up for a change. Bring back the BMF.